Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Risk Media Broker Best Practices webinar series. I'm Verl Workman, and I am fired up and excited on about today's webinar. We're going to share with you how you can take one database and 1,000 prospects and turn it into flat-out cash cow and unlimited opportunities. And we are really excited to have some great guests with us today. Once again, I'm Verl Workman. I'm the founder and CEO of Workman Success Systems. We coach and train many of the top agents and teams in the country with a high focus on automation and systems. And at the center of everybody's business is their database. And we're going to have a really strong focus today on the database. We'll have a lot of good questions and a lot of interaction there. I want to encourage everybody to stay on till the very end of the webinar, where we're going to give you a very specific URL where you can get not only a copy of the notes from today's session, but also some free gifts that are going to be provided to you by our guests. During the webinar today, I'm going to also encourage you to ask questions. If you click on the questions button on your control panel, and if you have a question for any of our guests, you can type those in. I'll be monitoring the questions during the conversation, and during appropriate times, we'll take a break, and I'll share those with you. And I want to just jump right in and introduce our first guest today. We are very, very fortunate to have with us Jonathan Smoke, the Chief Economist for Realtor.com. Jonathan's been at Realtor.com since 2014, but he's a 21-year industry veteran. And when they say he's not your typical economist, there's a lot of reasons why. One is that oftentimes when you get with an economist, you have a strong bean counter that's a high analytical, but oftentimes they don't really have the personality and the energy, enthusiasm to be engaging. Jonathan is the exact opposite of that. He's the high analytical and the economist that has a great mind and a way of thinking and analyzing and projecting, but he's also a really fun guy. When I asked him what he likes to do when he's not, in a spreadsheet, he says, I love being a DJ. He puts on parties, including one coming up at the mid-year NAR conventions and with different associations of realtors, and he loves getting in the middle of agents and really making things fun. He was named by Housing Wire in 2015 as a new wave of economists that are shaking up the status quo, and that's a high five for me. He speaks at association, events, NAR. He's regularly quoted in national and local media. You can read his weekly commentary on Realtor.com. If you really want to know what's going on in the business, I strongly suggest that you follow him on @SmokeOnHousing on Twitter. Jonathan, thanks so much for being here. I'm excited that you're here, and I'm really looking forward to the information you're about to share with our guests today.
Well, wow, Verl, I appreciate that introduction. The only thing that could have made it better is actually playing some good music to get people dancing, but, we'll save that for the next one.
I'm dancing in my mind. I'm with you.
So I hope everybody on the call had a fantastic 2015. It was the best year in real estate since 2007. What I'm showing here is just the experience of Realtor.com, and it was a great year for us as well. And a lot of that had to do with the market finally returning to what I would say normal. And because of that, we saw demand grow rapidly because we were finally seeing pretty much all sectors of the housing market, from entry-level first-time buyers all the way to second homes and retirement homes, growing in virtually every place in the country. As a result, our traffic grew. We set a new record on a monthly basis. We set a record for the monthly average. But we didn't end with that just being 2015. This year has started off even stronger. This chart shows January, but actually we even set a new record in February. So essentially this is telling us that the year and the demand that we experienced last year, we're not finished using it. I would argue, and that's what I'll be doing on this webinar today, is talking about how the demand has actually only been growing, and that's a good thing for the market, but it's also a challenging thing for you guys. So we can go into the next slide, Verl. Let me refer you to a broader source of traffic. This comes from ComScore. They are the authority for online traffic in general, and this is specific on real estate, all real estate websites. So this is not only Realtor.com, It includes your websites that you're using, and it's the full spectrum of things from renting apartments to looking at pretty houses and home improvement sites, all the way to, of course, looking at listings and homes for sale on Realtor.com. You can say that from this that the real estate demand funnel is huge and the trends have been very positive, and no question we started off the year very strongly. It's a jump that's even significant over last year when last January saw a jump, and that's especially true for young people who have been the missing piece of the real estate market up until last year. But I don't want you to focus on just the trend there. I want you to focus on those numbers that are printed underneath the lines, and just take a second to think about what they mean. 36% of people 55 plus in the United States looked at real estate online in January. 57% of people 35 to 54 looked at real estate online in January. And 2/3 of adult millennials, those 21 to 34, looked at real estate online in January. Add it all up, that's over 120 million people focused on real estate. We indeed are in the most popular industry in the country, if not the world. But the big challenge is, what do we do with those huge numbers in the funnel? So let's go to the next slide and think about these numbers more deeply. And let me just focus specifically on Realtor.com's traffic, because there I can talk about its composition and how those numbers break down. I would argue we touch virtually every serious buyer in the country. And so if we take that number for January, and it was a bit higher, getting closer to 51 million uniques in February, 70% identify themselves of the traffic, and we survey a big sample every day, identified themselves as buyers. That's 35 million potential buyers. Even if you assume that every buying household represents 2 of those visitors, that's more than 17 million potential buyers this year. Of course, we won't even sell 6 million total new and existing homes in 2016. So why are there so many? Well, these millions have a pretty enormous difference in their time frames. Typically, the journey today is on average at least a year, because today's environment for getting ready to and finding a home that fits your needs and purchasing it arguably is one of the most difficult environments that we've ever had, especially for first-time buyers. People in this funnel are at all kinds of different stages in the journey. There are some that are ready to purchase as soon as they can find that home, and then there are others who are, quite frankly, 18 months away from being able to even consider qualifying for a mortgage. As a result, they have all kinds of different challenges, and fundamentally, we don't have enough inventory to satisfy them all. But let's dive into the people that really move your business in the short term. They are what we like to call serious buyers. And we define that because we ask them their intentions. And if they're on a scale of 1 to 10, if they tell us they're more like an 8, 9, or 10 for likelihood to buy a home in the next 6 months, we consider they're serious. And then they also tell us that they're taking actions that back up that seriousness. So if you want a best gauge of who will buy this year, it's these serious buyers. And this is what we know about them. They on average take a total of 3 to 12 months to buy. They're far more likely to be well along in their journey. So you may be touching them as they get much further in that process. They're not likely to wait more than a year because life is compelling them to buy, and they face fewer obstacles than most other buyers.
Okay, what do you mean by, let me just real quick, what do you mean by life is compelling them to buy? What do you mean by that?
Because when you see what are the key triggers for people purchasing homes today, it's because they're acting on a major life event that essentially is making them need to make a transaction soon. They've had the second child, they've been married for a couple of years, and they're preparing for the first child. They just had a new job and a relocation to a different part of town or a different market. These aren't people that are typically sitting on the fence. But we also see them as people who the top 2 or 3 reasons for buying a home last year were people recognizing that interest rates and home prices were as favorable as they're ever going to be, and that's absolutely the truth. And so serious buyers are essentially trying to act because they feel compelled, and there's a sense of urgency.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for clarifying that, yeah.
So what are they doing? Well, they're searching, and I'll be the first to tell you that they're looking at Realtor.com. They're looking at every possible website. Why wouldn't you? If you're going to make one of the biggest decisions in your life, you're going to be looking at everything possible to help you become educated and make a good decision. They're far more likely to be doing things like getting pre-approved for a mortgage. They are the people who are most likely to be asking for information, holding up their hand, sharing their contact information, and that means, by the way, they're most likely to be a lead. They visit you in person. They're the ones showing up at open homes. They're the ones actively making offers, and they're the ones that are engaging with agents in a formal way. The most critical challenge you face, I would argue, is understanding that you have a big range of prospects, some of which are these more short-term focused, serious buyers, but then a whole collection of what you can argue are more casually beginning their search and might be 2 years or further out in that process. So go to the next slide, Verl. This big funnel and long journey is not going to change anytime soon. The best plan for you to think about how 2016 is going to shake out is very similar to last year. Inventory is only going to get tighter. We did see listings grow 2% in February, but guess what? Sales grew even faster because we know that the median days on market, how long that inventory is sitting, declined by 4%. So we're adding to inventory, but we're not adding inventory fast enough for it to outpace the demand that's out there. So that condition is going to continue to remain the same. And leads us to the next slide, which is that this large share of pent-up demand, which I would argue is huge and is represented by the fact that the #1 reason people told us that they were buying a home last year was they're tired of their current home. It's only going to get bigger. People today have been in their homes for an abnormally length of time. The median length of time is 11 years, when historically it's 6 to 7 years. And now conditions are much better for them, yet the tight inventory situation makes it so hard to find a home that's become their #1 issue. When we survey buyers, what's getting in your way in terms of purchasing a home, it's not a credit score, it's not the down payment, it's actually physically being able to find a home that meets their needs. Affordability, at least on the owning side, remains tantalizingly strong, and yet rents at the same time are growing faster than prices. So if you're a renter in today's market, you're getting even more and more focused on wanting to act sooner rather than later. And that's, of course, in part because mortgage rates are low, and actually lower now than last year. So it's an even more attractive environment. And on the supply side, new construction is simply not growing fast enough so that this tight supply situation isn't going to disappear anytime soon. And we have the 2 largest generations in our history hitting ages where buying homes is a key part of those life events that we were just discussing. So what are you to do about it? Well, I would argue you have the biggest job. And when we look at the survey data about what prospects need, and remember that these are literally millions of prospects, they need lots of help. This is a list of the top benefits highlighted in the 2015 Buyer and Seller Profile Report from the National Association of Realtors. And look at what they basically highlight as what the value is that they get from agents throughout the process. They basically have needs that evolve along the journey as you think about these different items. They don't understand the process to begin with, and that's true for even the people that are more sophisticated, because we don't exactly, the typical person is not buying a home every single year, and there's plenty of things about this market that's very different even if they've bought a home before. They want to avoid making mistakes, and you are the experts that help them through that. They, of course, need help with negotiations. They need help with other service providers, including lenders, and that's especially true in this environment where qualifying for a mortgage is so difficult and rates are so volatile. They need you to tell them where they are wrong with regards to what areas that they're looking for. Note that they both say that the value you provide is in expanding their search and narrowing their search. And I would argue one that we didn't think to ask is they need you to teach them how real life is different from what they quote unquote know from watching HGTV every weekend. So these millions of early stream prospects will likely turn into customers who can keep your business growing for a long time into the future. And the funny thing that is about that is that these early stage ones that are in your funnel today are likely going to be the ones who say they've known you and have trusted you for some time because you've been helping them in the early stages of this journey. And I hope that context helps you think about this in a positive way, but I don't underestimate the job that you provide in this business.
You know, it's an amazing amount of information, and what scares me a little bit, it doesn't really scare me. I look at it as an opportunity that we have access to buyers like we never have before. There's an unlimited number of leads being generated, and the big challenge is inventory. I think it's really interesting. It really brought that to the forefront today as you talked about the number of buyers that are out there, and even when you cut them in half and you say there's 2 to every household, and then you look at the number of people that actually buy this year, we have to really be different. We have to really do a good job of separating ourselves from everybody else as individual companies and individual agents.
That's right.
So let me ask you a quick question on, you know, as you're kind of looking at the future and what the future holds. You know, everyone is glued to CNN and Fox News and what's going on with the election this year. How do you perceive that this being an election year and what's happening with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and all that is going to make a difference on the housing market, or do you think it's going to make an impact at all?
Well, historically, presidential election years, believe it or not, don't have a very tight correlation to big differences in the housing market. If anything, election years tend to be slightly better, meaning that we usually have slightly stronger sales, prices appreciate a bit more, and that's normally because interest rates are a bit more tame because the Federal Reserve doesn't like to be doing things that make it look like they're favoring the incumbent over new folks or in any way influencing the election. So this year clearly is evolving into something that maybe we haven't seen in 50 years or so. So it's really hard to look at it, but I always recommend, and by the way, Verl, that is the #1 question I hear when I'm out on the road talking to realtors, is they want to know how this crazy election year is going to impact their market. And I would say, well, think about your own experience. I can tell you I have never bought a home based on who is in the White House or who is likely to be in the White House in the next year. I've bought homes because I got a new job, because I moved to a new area, because I had the second child, because we were preparing for the first child, and none of those things have any correlation with who's going to be president. And I think that if we continue to think that way, realize that actually mortgage rates are going to be our friend this year, it's probably going to be a fantastic year despite of what happens in the election.
One of the things I thought was interesting that you brought up was the lack of inventory and that builders can't build fast enough. Are we seeing a lot more permits being taken out? Do you have data on that?
Yes. In fact, new data for February was just released on Wednesday, and it's finally showing that the biggest growth is occurring in single family. We've had the most permits that effectively we've had in about 7 years. It's still not enough, I would argue, but it's exactly what the market needs to see. Unfortunately, the construction industry has been radically impacted by the downturn, and they just simply can't do the kind of 20, 30, 40% growth that we might have seen in prior decades. So this year we'll probably have healthy growth of around 15%, and that means for agents you're going to increasingly have new home alternatives where you haven't really been thinking that way in recent years. But it's not going to be enough to help address the fact that there's more demand out there than there is supply.
Makes me want to be in the development side of the business for a while.
Well, yeah, but that's one of the challenges. It's darn difficult to get financing on the development side. So, you know, it's part of the reason why we can't get enough units out of the ground.
Makes complete sense. Jonathan, it's always a pleasure to listen to you and the insights you have on the industry, and I'm sure we'll have more questions as we continue to go through the presentation today. I want to just take a minute, if I can, and introduce our next couple of guests. We have Kevin Markarian here with us, who's the owner and broker of they're called Marker Real Estate in San Francisco, California. And we're excited to have Kevin with us. Kevin runs a fun company. They have a great culture and a great dynamic. And he's a contributor to industry news. He's nationally recognized as one of the leaders for his innovative approach in lead generation and how they generate business. He's got great agents and also an inside sales team. What I think is interesting about Kevin is people talk about lead generation and how do we feed the beast as you grow your company, and Kevin will step right up and tell you that his leads, he generates just a boatload of leads company-wide through Realtor.com, which I think is very, very impressive. We also have with us Keith Hockin, and Keith and I go way back in our relationship with Top Producer over the years. And Keith's a senior broker consultant, and he helps a lot of the top brokers in the country really integrate not just Top Producer, but move products into their brokerage to be able to increase their touches with their clients and reduce the number of touches it takes to accomplish that goal by applying the tools and the technology and the trade secrets that Top Producer has developed over the years. Keith's going to be co-moderating, is going to jump in and ask questions as we kind of hear from Kevin about how he's taking the information that we've learned from Jonathan, applying it to his business, and getting a true return on the dollars that he spends. So Kevin, welcome. And Keith, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here. This is Kevin Markarian. It's always great to be here speaking with some really smart people and listening to Jonathan Smoke. I mean, wow, there's some really, really phenomenal information there. And just wanted to say real quick on something that Jonathan touched on. 17 million buyers out there inquiring about property, only 6 million can buy. And what that means to me is that we need to be following up with those, the rest of those people. And that's one of the things that we feel that we're pretty good at doing and following up on a long-term basis. And as you mentioned, we generate a pretty large number of leads every month. And I wish that all of those people that inquire about property that we receive on a regular monthly basis are buy like right now today. They want to write an offer today, right now on the property they inquired on. The reality is that that's not the case. And knowing this, I just learned this information from Jonathan, and it's fantastic because it gives me a lot of reasons to be optimistic that we're going to convert a lot of these people, and we've been doing it, and so it's kind of like it's good to hear that that's the case. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and happy to answer any questions.
So Kevin, I really appreciate that. One of the things that I was thinking about was you were going through what you learned. I was listening to Jonathan, and I had the same kind of ahas about the number of buyers that are out there on our opportunity. I'm curious about your feelings about going after new business versus just working the business we already have in our database.
I think it's a little bit of both. We use Top Producer as our CRM, and it's helped us incredibly with our conversion. I started off as an individual agent. I literally had a notepad from Staples. I mean, it was chicken scratch, trying to keep up with who I met that day and who I should follow up with tomorrow and the day after, and so on and so forth. Having a CRM it's just been unbelievable to our conversion rates. Helps so much, and without having that CRM, and we use Top Producer, we wouldn't be able to close as many the business that we've been able to close, and it helps. It's so many ways. I mean, there's long-term email follow-up. So it goes to your question. I mean, we're focusing heavily on new prospects, but we're also focusing on following up with people that are in our database. And now we have roughly 13,000 people in our database, and they're all in Top Producer, and the majority of them are receiving long-term email campaigns, and we're tracking them. We know when the last time we talked to them. We know sort of what was said in that conversation, and so it just helps us stay on top of our database and of the people that have inquired about property, and knowing that, going back to what Jonathan said, that there's only 6 million out of 17 million are going to actually do a transaction this year. So it's really important to have long-term systems in place to be able to deliver and convert business.
That's awesome. So on my screen, we've got kind of steps for success. You want to kind of take us through some of the things you focus on and how you work through that?
Yeah, sure. So I can just tell you step by step. When a lead comes in, we have an instant responder. We generate about 500 new inquiries every month, and we use a software system called 5 Street, which allows us to send out an immediate text message, an immediate email, and just acknowledging them and acknowledging that we've received their inquiry, and then we follow up with a phone call within the first 5 minutes. And if anyone's done any research on response time with online leads, I mean it's crucial. It's beyond crucial. I mean these people are out there. They're looking at property. They're not necessarily loyal to any one person, so they're going to move on unless you respond. So we use those systems. We use Top Producer to continue our follow-up, and then what we do is we disperse leads on our team to agents that we feel are most likely to close them, and so we pass the leads out, and then we assign them in Top Producer. And we assign the leads to the agent that's going to be working them in Top Producer, and then that agent is now responsible to follow up in the system. And so a couple of things that does is number one is if we're following up on a regular basis and we're taking notes of our correspondence, it's an accountability, sort of a built-in accountability. We know what the agents are doing, and also it helps us to stay in front of the person who inquired about the property, and for us to provide value to them and show them, share with them information about new homes on the market and what have you. And so that's for someone that is like, let's say someone who just inquired, and now we're reaching out to them, and we've assigned them to an agent. There are, of course, many people who come through who aren't necessarily ready to talk right now. I mean, we have a long-term follow-up campaign that we utilize. It's something that we've built. It's a 32-day follow-up system that they're getting pretty heavily contacted within the first 32 days, and then it's every 30 days thereafter, forever. And I mentioned something to you earlier, and it's a really kind of a cool story. I'll say it again. Here's an example of the follow-up and how important it is, and using Top Producer and using our CRM, how important it is. We had 5 people inquire about a home on one day, all 5 of them on different properties on the same day. And we had followed up with them. It took us 17 days to actually get those 5 people to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm ready to talk to an agent. And within that 17-day period, we touched them 26 times with an email, text message, and phone call. I think that's pretty powerful, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without Top Producer or having a CRM. It would have been impossible, given that we've got 13,000 people to follow up with. But so going here on this slide here, so yeah, I mean, it's important having an online presence that's going to be consistent with what you do as your profession. So I mean, thinking about leads and what we do, we're talking to them every single day. We're responding to their inquiries, and we're talking with them on the phone. And the first thing they're going to do is that they're probably, I mean, literally, I think people are literally Googling me as I'm talking to them on the phone. So if they Google you and they see that, you're not a realtor, or you're in some other profession, or you don't have reviews, you want to have a consistent message. And one of the things I really like about Realtor.com is that they have this thing where you can get recommendations. And so it's really, really powerful. It's recommendations versus reviews, so there's a difference. And it's really powerful for brand new agents, and we have all of our agents do this. So if you're a brand new agent, you're competing against people that have hundreds of reviews. Now everyone has a review. I mean, this is the world we live in. So the thing with Realtor.com, though, is we've taken advantage of the recommendation option, which allows you to get recommendations from anyone. You don't necessarily have to have done a transaction with them. So, for example, if you're new in the business and you ask a colleague from a previous profession, hey, would you mind giving me a recommendation? Would you recommend me to someone? I'm in real estate now. Would you recommend me to someone if they were interested in buying or selling a home? And so they can now go into Realtor.com on that part of Realtor.com and put in a recommendation. So now, if you have a new agent, you are, the person maybe never done a transaction, haven't done very many, don't have very many reviews, but somebody Googles you, they're going to see your recommendations, and so that's going to be powerful. Now you can be on more of a level playing field. So
it absolutely works. That's great advice, and that absolutely works. I'm going to jump back with you for just a second. You were talking about 500 leads a month coming in from through Realtor.com, and you've got these agents that are out there working leads. How do you really distribute those leads and make sure they're being touched appropriately by the agents in the brokerage?
Yeah, I wish I could show you. I wish I could show you our top producer system. So, when a lead comes in, we're pre-screening them. We're making sure that I don't want to, there's a couple different ways of doing it. Some people take in leads and they just blast them out to their team right away. That's fine, and I think that could work, but I've found that we would be able to increase our conversion rate when we actually we talk to a person, we do like a pre-screening, and then we assign the person who inquired about a home to one of our agents. And so we always want to find out, at least with us, is are they committed to another agent, and are they pre-approved? Or does it sound like they can get pre-approved? And if they can meet those, and of course we don't want them to be committed to anyone, and we don't want them to be, we'd like to at least know that they can get pre-approved. So if someone tells me I've got $500,000 in the bank, I've got an 800 credit score, and I'm the VP of some company, and chances are I'm going to want to work with that person. So if we can get someone, once we've got those questions answered, then we assign the person to someone on our team, and we introduce that person to a business partner. And there's a couple things I want to point out. I always like to say, I use the word committed. Are you committed to an agent? Or you're not committed to an agent, right? You're just kind of starting out your search. And I find that using the word committed, and I learned this from someone else. I didn't make this up, but it works incredibly well, because the other word is like, are you working with an agent? Everyone's working with an agent, but seems to me like nobody wants to be committed to anything. I ask my friend who's been in a relationship for 15 years, doesn't want to commit to getting married, whatever. But so using the word committed has helped us, and people don't want to be committed to anyone, so it gives us an opportunity to meet with them. And then we assign them to people that we think are most likely to convert and able to close that work with that person and hopefully find them a property and close the transaction. So if it's someone that, let's say someone inquires about a property in a particular zip code, I've got, an agent that works that zip code, that knows the area really well, I'm going to connect them. If it's someone that's, let's say they're not going to be compatible. For example, if I've got someone who's a CEO of a company who's been around for whatever, bought 15 houses, and I'm probably not going to put that person with my newest agent that's barely brand new in the business, So those are some of the things that I think has helped us with conversion. To us, it's really about the conversion and setting up the client with the right person. So talking about 4 points a day, keep your agents hungry.
So I love, before you go on to the next slide, just let me ask you a couple questions. One of the things I think is really interesting is that you've kind of segmented how you're following up with leads, and you're taking specialists and letting them communicate with the client online in a way that is comfortable with the client until they raise their hand and say they're ready to work with an agent. And I think that's really important. Can I ask you, how do you compensate the inside sales team versus your outside real estate agents? Are they just an hourly wage? You pay them a bonus for appointment setting? What's the concept behind your compensation plan?
We do an hourly, and then there's a bonus per every deal. And then there's like a bonus structure based on how many we can, like if we're based on our numbers. So if we can improve on our numbers from last year, there's an additional bonus. And that, make those goals attainable, but challenging. And so we do that. And then I use, we have inside sales people so one person's local, and then 2 other people are from a third party that we use to do our calls for us, and they get paid an hourly wage as well. I don't know if I can say who that is now or whatever, but if anyone wants to know.
Sure, yeah, throw it out. Tell us who you use if that's what they do and they're good at it.
Yeah, this company is called My Outdesk, and they're a company from the Philippines. And so there's, you've got the culture thing going, so there's that, right? So I think as far as conversion, I think having someone who's local is probably going to give you a higher conversion. However, the people from My Outdesk have been fantastic. They do a great job, and many of them are trained, and their costs are pretty reasonable. So we use them. We have 1 local person and 2 people from My Outdesk. So there's that. And then, so do you want me to go into the 4 points thing, or do you have any other questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about, as a brokerage, it generates a lot of leads. a lot of people are struggling with, how do I get my agents to follow up, to do as many touches as you're doing over 17 days, to get 5 people to raise their hand on the 17th day is a big deal, because most agents will follow up for 1 day or 2 days or even 2 calls, but they don't continue to follow up, and the lead just goes away, and you've spent all of this money and marketing and all of these things to generate the leads, but the agents take the low-hanging fruit and don't follow up.
That's a great point, and I recognize it. And so I don't really, frankly, I don't expect the agents to follow up as heavily as we do on our inside sales team. That's why I have the inside sales team. The agents are going to go out, like you said, they want to go and they want to sell property. They're out in the field. They're not all going to be able to sit down and prospect for hours and hours and hours, because then they're not going to be on the field selling property. And their goal for prospecting is to set an appointment. So, they can be in their first call or first 30 minutes and they're out. Now they're out in the field and their whole day's gone. So, yeah, we don't expect them to be ultra on top of everything, but that's why we have the ISA. And so what we do is we have a rule that if with the top producer, the way we track who's following up is by taking notes. So the agents are, yes, they're responsible for taking notes and sharing and putting down the correspondence that they've had with the client in the top producer in our CRM. So we go in now, we see that what's transpired. How many homes have they shown? How did it go in that conversation? How did we called them? What time we called them? So on and so forth. So we have a rule though with our ISAs that their job is to support our agents. And so if there's an agent that hasn't followed up, within 7 days, their job is to then reach out to the client and say, hi, this is Catherine with Marker Real Estate. I'm John's assistant. I'm just reaching out to see how things are going. I know that you had met with John last week. He showed you that home. And the reason why they say that is because they see it in the notes. And he showed you that home last week. There are a couple of new homes available on the market, and John, would you like me to have John reach out to you? So a couple of things happen there. We're hopefully getting someone to raise their hand and say, yes, I'd love John to reach out to me, right? John's fantastic. Then we call John, and let's just say he happens to be out in the field in between appointments. You get the call from Catherine, hey, John, I talked with your client, and they want to meet with you. Are you available on Saturday? Awesome, yes. So now we've kind of done a little bit of their job for them, but we're helping them out. We're supporting them. And so that works great, helps us. The other thing that it does is, let's say Catherine calls the client and says, hey, how's everything going? And, there haven't been any notes in the system for a week. And then the client says, oh, I haven't heard from John. I texted him 5 times. I called him 6 times. No response. So what does that do? Now I know I have to have a conversation with John. Hey, John, I just talked with this client. What's happening? It sounds like you haven't had a chance to follow up what's going on. If that happens on a regular basis, then of course maybe we need to give that lead to someone else, reassign the lead, because maybe John is too busy, or maybe John's not doing a good job with following up, or maybe he needs to be trained a little bit better. So it's kind of like a built-in accountability. I like that. I feel like it's more, it's not as like, I don't know, there's different ways of doing it. I feel like it's just kind of an easier way. It's not as difficult, I guess, or awkward, or it's just more kind of you're there to help, and really you are, as opposed to saying like pointing them out and kind of reprimanding people. It's just, I think it's more of an easier, warmer approach.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I absolutely appreciate that. So you do a good job of lead generation. Are you having your agents prospect as well? This is a great slide on prospecting. Talk to me about some of the things you have them do.
Yeah. I mean, they're expected to prospect. I mean, we're not sitting over them and forcing people to prospect, but we do have a certain expectation. I mean, if they want to continue to get leads, and for them too. I mean, they understand if you're not out. We do that. We talk. We have a lot of role play that we do. We do our trainings. And by the way, we don't have a weekly meeting or anything. I mean, it's really about providing value and efficiency of time. When there's something to talk about, we'll do a meeting. But we do a lot of role play. We feel like we're salespeople, and I think it takes a lot of practice to be good at sales. And the more you practice, the better you get. It's like shooting free throws with Kobe Bryant. I mean, same thing. I mean, that guy probably shot 1 million free throws in his life. Compare that to how many times he's actually shot it in a game. I mean, as far as that, he's probably practiced many more times than he's actually done in a game. So believe in practice, or believe in role play, believe in I think prospecting is important, and then the proof's in the pudding. Like you see who's successful, who's finding success, and usually are those that are following up.
Talk to me a little bit about the importance of communication and follow-up plans and the action plans you have running in your top producer.
Yeah, I mean we have a 60-day follow-up plan where we're, as far as email goes. So it's like a pre-written email campaign, and they're getting followed up with really kind of short conversational emails versus like a big newsletter with 1,000 pictures and 1,000,000 words that no one ever reads. It's sends it to spam. We have like just couple quick sentences. Hey John, this is just wanted to check in. There's a couple new listings on the market. Are you available for a phone call? And that's what it is, and that's what our follow-up sort of plan is kind of how it's structured. So we do the 60-day follow-up, and then we have a 5-year long-term follow-up campaign. One of the things we've done too is we hired a writer to write out specific email campaigns, 3-year email campaigns based on zip code. So for example, if somebody inquired about a zip code or property in a specific zip code, we've got 3 years worth of follow-up email campaigns that it's relevant to that zip code. For example, let's say someone inquired 94109, you can say, hi John, did you know that at the end of Jones Street there's a stairway that you can walk up, and at the top of the stairway there's a beautiful view of the Golden Gate Bridge and the bay. We know Russian Hill. Contact us for more information or something like that. So it's kind of like, informational content that we found some pretty good results out of it, and we get people responding all the time. So having that system in place has really helped us. And just want to go real quick about the lead sources. I mean, I've tried just about every lead source that you can imagine. We choose to work with Realtor.com because, in my experience, that's given us the best conversion. I find that the leads that we received through Realtor.com seem to be further along in the pipeline, and we were able to convert them better versus many of the other sources out there. And so that's why we use Realtor.com. We generate like 500 leads roughly a month, ballpark, and every month's kind of different. But and so that's what's helped us and built my business on online leads. We started buying counties, so we're buying counties, and we're looking to expand and grow, and so we look at other counties nearby, and it's been a great way to recruit people too, because a lot of people, especially a lot of newer agents and even some experienced agents, there's sometimes think about the percentages of people that quit the industry. It was like 87% or something quit within like the first 2 years. I don't know if that's an accurate statistic, but it's somewhere close to that. And so I think a big part of that is not because people aren't good salespeople or they're not motivated. I think it's a big part of it is because they're not able to drum up enough business to sit in front of people and do what they're good at doing. And so I think with the leads, what we're able to do is we're able to bridge the gap, get them from point A to point B much faster because we're providing them with leads. And the way we structure it, how we pre-screen them, they're not wasting their time. We're dealing with, because a lot of times you have people that are just wasting time looking at property online. We don't send those leads to our clients. Go ahead.
Kevin, I think that's awesome. I want to make sure that we invite Keith into the conversation. And Keith, I appreciate you just kind of listening in, and as we kind of go through how they're utilizing their contact manager and lead generation from Realtor.com. Do you mind just sharing us a little bit how the communications plan with or without a program like 5 Street makes a big difference in that broker's conversion rate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of things that Kevin has really got going on culturally. But, it's all about systems, right? So I think one of the things, the takeaways I have from listening to what Kevin's doing is it all starts with the first impression, right? That consumers going to Realtor.com, they'll find a home, they're interested or they have questions about it, they hit submit, and then they wait. And I think one of the things that's really important is speed really matters today. And I think, Kevin, you're using 5 Street, but you also have your ISAs, getting back to those leads within 5 minutes, which ultimately, I think, when you look at conversion, it always starts at the beginning. And if you don't make a first impression, you don't really have an opportunity to convert them. And I would say, what would you say, Kevin, is your success rate on actually talking to those consumers at the beginning?
So we have we have our follow-up through 5 Street, and right. So they get a response within about a minute from us, and I'd say within about 5 minutes, we get 35% of the people that put in an inquiry respond back to us within 5 minutes.
That's
like
amazing.
They respond back to us within 5 minutes. So it's pretty powerful.
And I think, would you say that also, you know, when you look at your agents, you know, I think, was it Verl, you mentioned this, talking to a stranger versus someone you know. You know, we talked about that. I think it's something interesting, whereas now that you have an open line of communication, your agents are more likely to, you know, jump at that opportunity because the opportunity is real, right? And it's not someone that they feel like is a cold call.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I mean,
so,
you're talking about,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So I think, Verl, I think there's a couple of things that, you know, takeaway that everyone can take away is, one is speed matters when it comes to your first impression. I think that's a real big important thing. So something like 5 Street is obviously going to help you make that first impression if you're not able to. Whether you have a big team or not, or if you're an individual, I think you need to find something that if you are investing online, that can make that first impression for you. Text messaging platforms are very popular today. I think we're more likely to read a text than we are an email, just being honest, as you know, someone who lives off his phone. I think the other thing too, I think I take away from what, you know, Kevin was doing with his systems is, and here's just an example of like an auto text, right? Very simple. Hey, you know, we got your inquiry. We're tied up right now, or I'm tied up right now. When's a good time to give you a call? I don't think you need to overthink what your message is to a new consumer. I think it needs to just be simple. Hey, when can we talk, right? And acknowledging that, hey, we received your inquiry and we're here to help you. I think a lot of consumers today, unfortunately, feel like they go online, they find something they're interested in, they submit an inquiry, and they never hear back. And so what they end up doing is repeating that process over and over again. The second takeaway, though, I think I take what you're doing, Kevin, and you're using, obviously, Top Producers, your technology platform, to do it, but one of the biggest words I think I can give you is persistence. Your team, your company is persistent. You don't give up after 6 attempts or 10 attempts. You have 26 attempts or 30 attempts, and some of them go longer. So I think persistence is a real important thing when it's about improving your conversion rate. And how do you get more business from the people that you already have in your database? You need to persistently chase them, would be the way I would take it.
I want to say something about that. I think there's 3 things that can happen with that persistence. One is they're going to tell you stop calling me, and that's fine. If they tell me that, great, and I want to know that, and that's fine. The other 2 are, one is they're going to say, usually, is thank you. Wow, thank you for reaching out to me. I've been busy, I've been this or that. And then the other thing that I hear a lot is, wow, sorry, I'm really sorry. I didn't respond to you sooner. Thanks for reaching out. So it's like, it's either they're not interested anymore, which, by the way, if they send me an email and they say, can you please take me off your list, they might get a phone call from me, and I'll just ask them, like, hey, it's no problem, I'll take you off your list, and maybe we can work something out, and maybe we can get a deal out of it. But no, so in all seriousness, those are usually the 3 responses that we receive, which is either
right.
Thank you, or I'm sorry, or I'll take you off your list. And if it's the third one, then that's fine, because then we know we shouldn't waste our energy and our time on that. So
talk to me about going beyond that first 17 or 20 days. You know, how do you go beyond that and keep them engaged?
Right. So we have a pretty aggressive, I would say, or maybe like heavy touch period within the first 30 days, and that's with our own texting, our calls and our emails. And then they're on the email drip campaign, right, which we talked about earlier, which is either the zip code campaign, where they're on for 3 years, so it's a very long time. And then we have a 5-year campaign, and we have a 60-day. They're going to be seen by us for a very, very long time, just through email itself. But we also have, going back to the 32-day thing, within the first 32 days, we're very active with them, and then it's every 30 days after that, they're getting a phone call forever, until they either buy or they don't buy, or they sell. So that's sort of how it is, and it's like, it doesn't stop. Like, we're going to continue to follow up until, one of those 3 things happen that I mentioned. Either they want to talk to you or they don't, and if they don't, that's fine, and we move on. So
one of my coaches, just as a funny note, one of my coaches says we follow up until they file a restraining order.
That's probably right. Hey, Kevin, it's Keith again. And I know, Verl, you're probably, maybe this is for both of you guys, but how important for you is actually having that process like identified? When you have this person that you've been chasing them down, and now, okay, it's been 30 days now, I got to change my path. How important is it for you to have a process created and kind of trained for your agents? And I think I would imagine that's important, but I also know that you spent time actually customizing your own process. Maybe you can speak to that.
Right. Starting out, it was just sort of off the top of my head, and just who am I going to call today, and just wasn't very organized. But once you start to grow, you need to have some structure. It can be an arbitrary period of number of times. I mean, you can make up the number of times you call them. Just, it doesn't. It's really not about. I don't know if there's like an exact science to call them on day 4, call them on day 5. I don't know. I mean, there's probably a million different versions you can look at online. You can find them. It's just a matter of staying in front of them, and it's important. Having the structure is important, especially when you start bringing on more people, and so you don't have to keep explaining yourself and starting. It just helps. It helps the process, and just decide on. I just decided on, this particular period of time to call them and email, and that's what we went with, and that so far has worked out. It worked out fine. I'd be curious to know, like, if there are some statistics out there. I'd love to hear about them, on how many times it takes to call before you get someone to raise their hand. And when I say raise their hand, meaning like they're interested in talking to you, how many emails does it take, how many text messages? I mean, that would be a really valuable bit of information. We think maybe we touched something. I mentioned earlier, we had 5 people inquire about 5 different properties on the same exact day. It took us 17 days and 26 touches to get them all 5 of them on the same exact day raise their hand. Said yes, we want to talk. So I don't know, maybe we're onto something, but it's important. Having the structure is important. It makes your life easy, and yeah, I mean, it's part of, I guess, structuring a business.
Would you say, I just want to ask one more question on that. What do you find it really works? Do you, when you get to that point of, okay, it's a year now, you're obviously not going to give up. You're still going to try and stay front and center of them. Do you still pick up the phone, call them, or do you pretty much put them on kind of more of like an email communication, on when you get to that far?
I mean, we're gonna keep calling them, and we do have the email communication, and I think it's really about providing value. Try to provide as much value as you can. I mean, I'll give you an example. We had an agent that had one of our leads, was assigned. Everything was great for like the first 2 weeks. They went, showed property, and then it was just dead silent for like over a year. And this agent continued to follow up, and he was sending out weekly emails every Friday. He'd send out new information on new listings, and he would do it himself. And then after a year, suddenly this person came out of nowhere and said, yeah, I've been in Brazil. I saw this listing you sent me. Let's go write an offer. Let's go take a look at it, write an offer. So as an individual agent, it's easier to do the stuff on your own. But once you start growing, it's really important to have the automation, because you can't email 13,000 people, every Friday by yourself. You need to have some leveraging technology. So, for us, having these systems like Top Producer, 5 Street, and the automation has been crucial to our success.
So I like to let me just jump in here, because I like to say there's no bad leads, just people who aren't ready yet. And the whole process of lead generation is database building. It's building a database of people so when they're ready, they think of you first. And you asked a couple of questions, Keith, and I think, Kevin, you've done a phenomenal job of sharing with us how you put systems in place. We do something very, very similar. We just simply categorize a lead as an A, B, or a C. An A lead is someone who you have an appointment with. A B lead is someone who's not ready for 30 to 90 days. We put them on a follow-up plan where we call them twice a month. And a C lead is someone who's more than 90 days out, and they get 1 phone call a month, plus they're on an auto hot sheet and an auto drip campaign. And so based on what the client tells you where they are, your communication, you launch them on a plan, and that's how you build your database. And then when agents are hungry and they need to make money, the first place we have them go to find business is in their database. I think that the database that you're talking about building here is like the core to your entire business.
Right. I agree. And
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm following up.
I agree 100%. And thinking about every person, I think, has a database. They have a database. How many people do you know? That's your database, and you can use and there you can input those people if it's your sphere of influence I'm talking about, people that you've known and throughout your life that you've met. You can you can start off. That's your database. Put those people into top producer. We do this. We tell our new agents to do this. Think about the number of people you know, email addresses, phone numbers, names. Put them into top producer, and then we have an action plan that we've built that is based on it's meant for your sphere of influence, for people that you know in your personal sphere. And it's a little bit more delicate, right? I mean, if you're talking with people that have been your friends for many years, you might approach them a little bit differently than you would someone who just came in online or referral or what have you. So we have a campaign that we've built that is based only on your sphere of influence, and we use top producer to follow up with them through it. And
you know what I think is kind of interesting is, I watch the message board and all the questions that are coming in, and top producer has got so many users. They've had so many people. I hear all the time, I used to use top producer and it's not user friendly, and no one will teach me how to use it. I hear all of these excuses as to why they don't use a database. Keith, talk to me about dealing with the number one objection in using top producer as a database is that I don't know how to use it. How do you overcome that? I don't know how to use it.
Oh, I mean, here's the thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
There's a lot of features on top producer, tons, and so many, and I think it's great, but we don't use them all. But might not use them all. I mean, it's the reality. Okay, so we use like 4 or 5 features, and the one we use, we really focus on them, and they're so easy. It's just taking notes. Like it's really easy. You can open up a contact, see their name. Click on their name, and then there's a place where you can start typing in notes. That's it. It's not that difficult. And then the other ones are like with the email thing. Seriously, like there's webinars that you can watch. You can even look stuff up on YouTube. You call me. I don't care. I mean, whatever. I'll show you. It's not. It seems like it's a lot because there's a lot of options, but we've just selected 2 or 3 or 4 now that work really well for us, and those are the ones we focus on. And it might take you a few days, but it's I'd say just focus on those things that you think are going to be most important to your business, and not worry about all the other features which you probably could use later. But I think that's maybe what happens to people. I'm just guessing, but. So,
I think they get overwhelmed. I agree with you. They get overwhelmed with all the things it can do, and they just need to I like to say that the best teacher is the game. Put a client in there and ask yourself, what next? Do I want to put them on an action plan? Do I want to set a follow-up call? Do I want to create a listing or a closing? Whatever happens to be the status of that client, then learn how to do the next thing for that client, and then you got it.
Right. You're talking about more of an organic approach, and I agree with you. Like, you don't have to learn everything. Just learn as you go.
So I agree. I couldn't have answered the question better than what Kevin did. But to be honest, that's what it really comes down to. Is everyone, they need a CRM. I don't think it's just with top producers. I think CRMs in general have a lot of features. I think what you need to do is preach what you got it for, right, and focus on what you got it for, which is you have all these people. I need help managing them, staying in touch with them, and focusing on that. There's a lot of other features. You need to ignore those things and really focus on the core of it, which is what I would like to call relationship management.
Yep. I think I can name the features that we use that are really powerful. So the notes, the email drip, and then market snapshot. We haven't really talked about are we going to talk about market snapshot because that's really important. It allows you to stay in contact with people by sending them just listed properties, just sold properties, price changes. It has information about the neighborhood. So that's a really powerful tool that we use, and it's really easy. Just literally click on, it says market snapshot, click it, and then you put in the search criteria like a zip code, and then the bedroom, bathroom, and price, and then they'll get branded information from you about new listings and new information about the area. So that's an important one. Those are really, I think that's about it. Like, we don't really use very many other ones. I know there's a lot of other features in there, in top producer, but those are the ones we really focus on.
There are a lot of really cool features. Market Snapshot's a gold mine. I like to say that it keeps me at the center of the interaction. It increases my touches with my clients. but it decreases the number of touches it takes for me to actually make that happen. So I want to have a really high-touch business, but I don't really want to have to work that hard to accomplish it. And having the right tools, the right systems, and the right processes is how I do that. And Top Producer is what runs it in my business and for many of our clients as well. I think you've done a really good job of helping us understand how you're using or what you're doing with Top Producer. You know, some people are asking questions like, you know, I thought I was going to be trained. This is not a training class. This is really understanding the concepts behind, you know, philosophically how you run your business. You know, have a database that runs everything. Have multiple lead generation sources that all feed into it. Automate the follow-up with short and long-term campaigns, and inspect what you expect. You know, look at what's happening so that if your people aren't doing a good job. And I think, Kevin, you really, I thought you really pointed this out, and I didn't spend much time on this, but you said, you know, I watch what's going on, and then I go and I give them help in areas where they need help in talking about your agents instead of just making it blanket. Some people do a better job at different phases of the conversion process than others, and it's a constant training process.
Yeah, I think, and you think about how you serve your clients, it's almost the same way. You know, you're gonna tailor your approach, and you're gonna help them based on what their needs are. If they tell you, you know, you're not just gonna show them every property, or you're not just gonna do it, you know, just blanket approach. I think it's more about providing value, and in order to do that, you need to understand your client and also understand your agent.
Absolutely true. We've gone through a lot of information. I can't believe our hour's already gone. Jonathan, unbelievable content and what's going on in the industry. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Kevin, I appreciate your enthusiasm and your willingness to share with everybody on what's working so well in your brokerage, and I wish you continued success. Keith, thanks for being part of the conversation today. Everybody's going to receive a survey following the webinar. I'm going to ask you to please fill out the survey, and also there will be a link in that survey that you can go and download a copy of the presentations and additional information from our guests today. On behalf of RIS Media, Move.com, Realtor.com, Top Producer, thank you all for being here, and to your continued success. It's going to be a phenomenal 2016. Thanks, everybody.